Welcome to the Decades Reloaded community podcast, the Mental Health Mixtape, where we will be talking all things mental health related in every aspect of life, connecting with local communities and fitness professionals. We're here to start the conversation around mental health and make a difference. So join us, take a listen and be part of the conversation. Hey, welcome to the podcast, Dom. How are you doing?
I'm good, thanks, Lucy. Thanks for inviting me to do this. I've been looking forward to it.
Oh, me too. This is so exciting. I can't actually wait to have you on the podcast today. It's going to be very honest, I think, very raw, very unfiltered, which is exactly what we want. So nothing's off limits today. I've got some things that I want to ask you, but please feel free to go off in whichever direction that you think is most appropriate for our listeners. It's a community podcast. I really want our community to get involved with this, have their input, and we can follow that up another time when this is all uploaded, ready for everyone to listen to. Oh, this is going to be great. So for anyone who doesn't, by some miracle, know who you are, can you just give our community a little bit of an introduction about you and the work that you do with Warriors?
Yeah, of course. So if we haven't met on social media, or perhaps it's your first time coming into contact with me today, then hi for the first time. If I already know you, then thanks for coming to listen to me and the amazing Lucy. Ultimately, I joined the fitness industry as a person who knew nothing about fitness. And today I wouldn't profess myself to be an athlete at all. But what I will say is my kind of mission in life has always been to empower women. As that journey has carried on, it is now men and children as well, but for me the forefront is obviously going to always be women, because that's what's in my heart, and proving that anybody can get active. I never want to say that anyone can do fitness, because it's all about being active, whether that is in community fitness, whether that's moving around your house more, and ultimately the benefits of mental health that come with moving your body, regardless of what ability you have with your body. Women's rights, that's kind of what everyone knows me for, is like Lucy said at the beginning, always just being pretty raw and unfiltered.
Yeah, I listened to you talking already. I've got Eternal's Power of a Woman just buzzing through my head, just like, and a bit of Little Mix Power. Just come on to the girls.
Oh, I love that song.
It's like an ultimate girl anthem.
Absolutely, yeah.
Brilliant. So what your Warriors class is, well, it's not really local, is it? Because you do have your local Warriors, but then you've got your wider reach of Warriors as well. So
yeah, exactly. I mean, so Warriors was not originally called Warriors. So this idea wasn't, so people always say, how did you come up with the idea of Warriors? Didn't it? Warriors created itself. The people are the warriors, and it was originally called Thermo Vibe Fitness, because when I first started the fitness industry, I thought everyone had to lose weight. So similar to the majority of people, I joined fitness to lose weight, and I was thinking a lot about the thermogenics, and I'd done all this study into how to lose weight, and that's how that name came. And quite quickly into my journey, I started to realize that something bigger was happening. And basically I got my first ever hoodie that had printed instructor on the back. I think I've been teaching about 6 weeks, and I mean, we'll probably get into my background during this podcast, but being a fitness instructor was probably one of the first things that I've ever achieved in my life. So having that instructor on the back, you can imagine, I know so many instructors that will listen today will remember the moment of having that title and how exciting it was. And unfortunately for me, well, I say unfortunately, but it actually shaped my life. Somebody took a photo of me from the back leaving that gym and posted it onto Spotted and said, who would want to come to this fat cows class? Like, it was literally as raw as that. Who would go to this fat cows class? And up until that moment, I don't think I'd ever kind of associated myself as being fat or being larger. I'd just always just been myself, because I'm quite short as well, and all of these things were being brought to my attention practically as soon as I joined the fitness industry. And so I watched it, and I can remember it felt like someone had hit my heart with a hammer, like, because that's me. I'm looking at myself. It's me. It's not something else on the internet. It's actually me. So I didn't know how to respond. My initial response was to sit and cry
Yeah, of
because I think
course.
anybody would, when they're targeted in that
Yeah.
way. But what I noticed as I watched it was obviously I couldn't delete it because it was unspotted. And I started to see all these comments popping up, and none of them were agreeing with the author of the post. So they were saying, "Oh my God, that's amazing." I remember one particular comment that will never leave my mind said, "Oh my God, who is this instructor? That's the sort of instructor that I need." And it all started to just these comments were coming and coming and coming. And I waited a day I thought I'm going to see just how many people this post is interacting because I knew something was happening. I knew I had this
Yeah.
purpose that was I wasn't sure what it was yet. And so I just put a little note underneath and said, okay, not the way I want to advertise my classes. However, that's me in that picture. And if I can do it, then anyone can do it. And Lucy, I mean, that was probably 6 weeks into my career and it just went boom. The
Goodness.
following Thursday, there was like 45 people waiting to get in that class on a Thursday, 9 o'clock morning. I just walked in,
Wow. I mean, that doesn't
hi,
even happen on a morning,
literally.
especially 6 weeks in.
Yeah, and the thing is, the reason that it doesn't usually happen is that they weren't coming to lose weight. They weren't coming to get fit. They were coming to be a part of something where they
Yeah.
could feel included, which, a lot of the time gyms and sort of, traditional fitness places and pictures can make people feel like they're not able to join straight
Yeah.
away. So that's kind of how it happened. And then, we started with the classes and all of a sudden I just but this one day, I was sort of going into squats and I just started going, hey, and like letting out this big shout. And I was like, what am I doing? And then they started to join in and I was like, guys, let's use our voices. It was all very I
Yeah.
look back and I suppose it's a bit cringy, and I look back, I'm like, what was happening. And then this one day, I'll never forget this moment. I just shouted Warriors, and I don't know where it came from. I just said, "Come on, Warriors!" And the voice just went from those little shouts to the roars that if anyone's ever experienced a live Warriors experience, that's what happens. We go
Oh, I've
from
got
having
chills as you talk
six.
about this, Dom. It's just honestly, it's so incredible.
Yeah,
And I have been very fortunate to participate in Warriors. Finally last year at Project Fit, Ruby,
yeah,
and my goodness, your Warrior chant just blew my mind. I was just like, yes, and I felt so liberated. Like
yeah,
I was really I mean, those people listening probably already know about the backstory with me losing my mum, and
yeah,
that's the weekend that it falls on every year. And so I was very emotional that weekend, and it was also my first year presenting Decades Reloaded at Project Fit, and it was the biggest stage I'd done it on so far as well. So my emotions were literally overspilling. So being in your session and just going, ah, was like the most unbelievable release.
I can still
Yeah,
remember
it's
you doing it.
phenomenal. And I
Yeah,
did feel part of your Warriors right there. As soon as I was chanting with them, I was like, yeah, I'm part of this gang. I want in. It's
absolutely. Yeah.
spectacular.
I think the
And
thing
you,
is with the Warriors is not necessarily about the people, because I always say to other instructors, we love our participants with all our heart, but they move on a lot of the time.
yeah,
They graduate to something else. I always say graduate, I never say leave. But they either graduate to something else or they move on with their lives, and it can leave that little hole. But what I
mm,
would say is that when it comes to group fitness and it comes to a group of people, it's the energy. So that's the reason that you were part of it, because as soon as you joined, you were a warrior. That's it. And it is that pure energy and equality that absolutely anybody can. So many people say, I just want to scream, but
yeah.
we're here to make sure they do.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? I'm very much with my class. I'm like, come on, let it out. Just sing or woo or do something. Just get your oxytocin levels up, get immersed in the experience and just let it all out, because whatever you're holding on to today, you can
Yeah,
get out through your body, through your voice, just feel it. And it can be quite hard sometimes to get people to come out of their shell and be a little bit
absolutely.
more vocal. So it's great seeing what you're doing. And I absolutely love everything that you share as well. I follow you quite intently online, as you've probably noticed. I'm quick to write on everything that you post. I just think you and your family are all fantastic.
Oh,
Um,
thank you.
but you're not just fitness royalty, are you?
No.
You've got
Well,
some friends in some very high places, which
yes,
do you want to tell us about?
yeah, I mean, it kind of started
I feel
with
like I
my
need a crown to put on at this point whilst I talk to
I'm gonna send you one in the post. If I need a photo with you in a crowd.
you.
Yeah, it sort of started out, I finished school when I was 14. And the small amount of time that I did go to school didn't add up to much at all. I was a carer for my mum and my dad, particularly, my dad. And I suppose there's still a lot of child carers out there now, but thankfully the systems are better, and there's that respite for children to still be children. For me, I became an adult quite quickly, and education just wasn't the kind of pinpoint of my attention. It was looking after the house, looking after my sibling and mum and dad, and of course my poor mum. She was equally looking after us, but she was not well enough to do so, and dad definitely. We'll come back to that story when we've got more time, because that's quite a big one. And
Yeah.
it ultimately led to me being a young mum with children and no education, to the point filling out forms were very difficult for me. And there's a few cultures that reside in the UK that people just assume that that's why you can't read and write, and mine is ultimately because of education. So I remember writing to my school and saying I didn't do my GCSEs, like I'm in my 20s now, and is there anything I can do? And they were like, well, no, we don't have anything. I remember I got some estimated grades and wondered if I could access them, but unfortunately, I literally didn't exist on the system. So I started to wonder, what can I do? And I found the Prince's Trust. And I remember Alfie was like just born, he's literally about 6 weeks old, and carrying this baby carrier in. And a woman called Jen was just sat at this desk. I looked around and everyone looked very professional. And I was just like, well, I think I want to have my own business because I can't get a job. And that was the main reason that I wanted a business. I could get jobs, but it wasn't what I wanted. I wanted to do something special. And the long and short of it, the Prince's Trust are incredible. And if you have any young person in your life, I will always say, please, please get them to the Prince's Trust, whether they've got an education or not, because the skills they'll learn there are just not accessible anywhere. And they put me in touch. So first of all, I did my adults GCSEs. I learned to read and write really quickly, because when you haven't had all that education, your brain's like a sponge, so you learn things really
Okay.
quickly. Learned my, to write, and I created Warriors ultimately, which moved very quickly. I'd started to film in America, traveling to Europe, and all over the UK. I was actually in Birmingham at the big Primark, and this phone call came through, and I'd already been asked if I could go to London and give a talk to the fellows, which are sort of the people who put the big money into the trust, just to talk about my journey, on behalf of the then Prince Charles, who's obviously now the king. And this call came through, and it was actually a royal assistant letting me know that my company had been requested by His Royal Highness. And I remember thinking, what in the Disney is going on here? And it was just the most weird thing ever. I know exactly what I ate that day. I remember every moment of that day. And yeah, it was true. We were given 2 weeks' notice. And of course, the Ministry of Defence, you couldn't tell anyone, not even your best friends, you couldn't tell anyone. So it was a really hard thing to keep in. And 2 weeks later, I was very blessed to go and meet His Royal Highness, and he was very gracious, and he's very funny, nothing like you see in the media at all. Very funny guy, and he actually paired me with the president of Coca-Cola and Sir Stelios of EasyJet as my international mentors, which was crazy.
My goodness.
Yeah,
Incredible people. Wow.
yeah. There are so many people out there, and this is kind of one of my fundamental things that I'll always tell people is just ask for help, because honestly, there are people out there that want to help you. There's people that have been where you are and got to where you want to go, and ultimately, the majority of them want to help you get there.
So what did you say to him? Like, this absolute womble on social media took a unauthorized photo of me and shared it online, and now I'm just here being an absolute badass, making women feel completely empowered, and they've gone, awesome, let's make you an absolute rock star.
Yeah, literally. It's just, I think the thing is, back then, because we're talking 10 years ago when this post went up, this hadn't been seen. You know, we thank
No.
God we all talk about it every day that your shape doesn't matter and your ability doesn't matter. Like, we're in the best part we've ever been when it comes to all doors are open to all people. But back then it wasn't, you know, they were still measuring Les Mills instructors before they got on international
Mm.
stages. You know, so here's me, like, hi, barely fitted into my leggings, but I don't care. Let's all do this together. So
Oh,
it was a shock factor. But, you know, luckily, thank God,
absolutely.
there's so many thousands of women that are doing it now, and so many thousands of women that are joining.
Yeah. Oh, I do love that. Your story is just remarkable. And I know there is so much else that we could talk about today about your background and everything else. Which I'd love for you to share a bit with us today, because you are a massive advocate for mental health because of the
Yeah,
things that you've experienced on your own journey throughout
Uh-huh.
life, as a child, as a parent, you know, and we also had a conversation. I don't know if you heard the podcast with Hannah, a lot about neurodivergence, and everything that comes into par with that. And we know there's a lot of close links between neurodivergence and certain mental health conditions as well. So
yeah,
most of the time, I'd say in our industry, there's a lot of talk about mental health, but not necessarily with enough. It's well
yeah,
intended to talk about mental health, but not necessarily the same real lived experience that gives you sort of knowledge that you can't necessarily buy online. What would
absolutely.
you what is your opinion on that? What do you think in terms of how the industry is now looking at mental health?
Yeah, I think you bang on the nail here, and this is where I really am outspoken, because I think that trending topics, because they just come across so obvious to people who don't really
Yeah.
understand what it's like. I mean, I've got ADHD. I was recently asked to go through full autism assessment, but after I got diagnosed with ADHD, I realized I was in the same position I was before I knew I had ADHD. No one really cares or gives me any help with it. So
Oh
I've
no.
celebrate it. You know, it's
Yeah.
ultimately who I am. And for anyone who's got ADHD or any kind of other, you know, these labels that they give to us, it is hard, because you do go from having like, I'm going to take on the world, to everybody hates me, I've got no friends, everything I say is
Mm.
wrong, and that's very normal. But when you have ultimately been through some of the things that I've been through, and I know there'll be so many people on here that have, you know, I found my dad dead when I was 14. I was losing our home by the time I was 16, married by 17, lost my first baby at 18, and ended up working in the glamour industry, also known as the sex industry, which is the most terrible place for any woman to ever be, because everything that is wonderful about a woman is sold and given away. Luckily for me, I didn't make a lot of mistakes that other women did. And I only sort of went to the level of modeling lingerie. Whereas a lot of my friends at the time, the money was talking, and you know, at the time it felt right, but ultimately later in life, for a lot of women, it doesn't feel right. For some women, they're buzzing, and you know, as long as the woman's happy, then I'm fine with whatever that woman does. It's when they're not happy that's the problem. um and ultimately, I look at mental health and I see it every day on the internet, and I see people making really small comments onto my status that are quite worrying. You know, they
Yeah.
are quite worrying, because you'll notice that when mental health is at the worst point, there's hardly any conversation. So
Mm.
when people are talking a lot about their mental health, they're either healing, no one's ever healed, but towards, you know, a really good place of their journey. The people that we need to look at and be really, really cautious of and give majority of our attention to are the ones that aren't speaking,
Yeah.
because they're the ones that are definitely in the situation that it's either happening right now, or they are not dealing with what's happening. A lot of people put it into the back of their mind and try to live with all that chaos happening around them. And that's what I do a lot of work with people, is taking off that emotional backpack that's got it all there. But going back to your question, yeah, I think you're completely right. I think that it's a trending it's a trending topic at the minute, and there's no action being taken, particularly by funded governing bodies, particularly by the NHS. And ultimately, it is falling within the community fitness realm to pick up real people that are on the floor in our communities.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, I saw last week, Mind shared a post about the government again promising all this funding and support for mental health, and again they've suddenly retreated back and they're
Yeah,
not meeting the promises that they're making. And the the mental health pandemic is getting so out of control now, and it doesn't
yeah,
need to be, but the help needs to be put in the right places by the right people, and we are very much so sort of putting out fires left, right, and centre with our communities, trying to help people identify. And then we're also, I don't know how you feel about this, but I feel like we're having to fight against the weight loss language that's very heavily used in our
yeah,
industry, and the stigma around physical aesthetics and everything else. Like, that hasn't gone away. I mean, there are loads of people that I know who have come into fitness who have had similar experiences to you. And even personally, when I started out 8 years ago, I was not the size that I am now. And I was like, oh, are people going to think that I'm too overweight to be a fitness instructor? And, some people say, well, you've always danced, so why would you not be able to teach dance fitness? It doesn't matter what you look like.
yeah,
And I kind of polled. And it was very 50-50 as to whether or not people, it was an anonymous poll. So it was
yeah.
50-50 as to whether or not people respected an instructor's abilities based on their weight.
Right.
And that has, I did another one last year and it's dropped slightly, leaning more in
Yeah,
favor of instructors should just be knowledgeable and good at what
yeah,
they do and have far more to offer than what they look like.
yeah,
And I definitely see a lot more conversation about that in the community fitness industry, about
yeah,
instructors being a lot more open about their own experiences, their mums, or their you know they've got a health condition or for whatever reason, or they're just, they're just not, whatever, they're just who they are, and that's being embraced by their community, that they want to go to them because they feel safe in a space with somebody who is just who they are. But
yeah,
there is still so much transformation talk being thrusted down our necks online, that I feel
yeah,
like we're fighting against that as well. Because when we're talking mental health, we're talking eating disorders, body dysmorphic disorders, we're not just
yeah,
talking about anxiety and depression, which I think is slightly misinterpreted as well. I think there's a large scope of people who think that that's what mental health is, and obviously we know that there's a lot
yeah,
more to it than that.
yeah.
So it does feel like we're sort of fighting our own fight. Like, we've got some great people bringing people into fitness, but potentially not for the right reasons, and we want them
Yeah,
to come in for.
absolutely. I mean, for me, you can imagine how many times this has gone over my mind, because Warriors does have a nutrition plan as well
Yeah,
as everything else that we do. And for some people, I mean, ours is called Power Up, and it's based on literally powering up your body, not shrinking it. So your
yeah,
body's going to do whatever it has to do anyway. But I've been over this 1,000 times in my mind when it comes to this subject, and for instructors out there that are struggling with this, here would be my advice. Um, the fitness industry is a great place to trap lost people. So people who are lost and people who don't love themselves will be attracted to your classes because they think you're there to help them get the revenge body, to lose weight, to be a bad bitch, and all this, that, and the other. And when you've got them in the net, you then have the power to teach them that they're already perfect as they are. And so they move through celebration rather than through rebelling against everything that they've been made to be.
yeah,
And I recently went on a spiritual trip to Malta because I'm doing a lot with my heritage at the moment. And when I got there, Lucy, I was looking around and everyone had my body type. I mean, everyone, all of the women were of this body type. And I was like, have I been fighting what I am for the last 10 years? Like,
yeah,
this is just what I am. This is what I've been made to be. And also my feet were made for dancing, and my fists were made for punching and my voice was made for shouting, and everything that we are is perfect, and that's why no one looks the same and no one is the same, and that's the greatest thing about humans as opposed to the animal kingdom and things like that. They all look the same and we expect them to be the same. Humans have never been the same. They've always been completely different, and every single one is made in their own unique way. So I don't worry too much about the fitness industry and the fitness industry's language, because it helps me to track the lost people, and it helps every other instructor to help those people that think they need to be something else. It's our jobs to show them that they're already awesome, and to rock out or to dance or to whatever it is you're doing with your community, getting them out of that house. And I've always said to my own instructors, it's not about what they do in the class, it's about what they had to fight to get through that door. And I don't mean ours, I mean their front door, you
Yeah,
know, and that's what community is about. That's not the gym.
no.
That's not the gym. You can only get that from a community fitness instructor, because they are the people, and I've met every kind of person that there is. They are the people who love other humans and love their community more than anyone else, because hardly any of them are making enough money to even live off. Honestly, like there's no money in community fitness. When people say, "Oh, but how do you feel when you train people? Are you worried about them taking your class?" I think sometimes I think, I wish they would. I'll give them my speakers. But ultimately, none of us will ever stop doing what we do. And so we shouldn't worry about the language of the industry, because it is actually helping us find the people who think they need to change.
I like that. I like that. That's a good mindset. You do have a very positive mindset when you talk about things. Cup's always half full, and just seeing, the blossoming flowers rather than the weeds. So,
Yeah.
um, something else that we talk quite a bit online about our own mental health experiences,
Yeah.
um, and are very, very open and honest about a lot of things. I don't know about you, over the years, people have said to me, "Oh, you shouldn't really talk about that. You might put people off, or, that's your business. It's not really for anyone else to know about. Nobody needs to hear about your bad day." And actually, like, we do have a bit of a mindset in instructor. We don't talk to our classes about our bad days, because we're there to motivate them and inspire them and lift their day. And I think that's right, in a sense of, when they turn up to class, they don't want to go, "Oh, like, my world's imploding today." But
Yeah.
being there, there's a lot of influencers now as well who are being much more vocal online about mood disorders, um, addiction or eating disorders and things like that. There's lots of avenues people can access information of people who have had real lived experiences now, and a lot of the mental health charities also have a panel of people from who like their real lived experience panel, who can share open and honest information about what they have gone through, where they started, where they've got to, the good and the bad and the ugly and the everything in between. What
Yeah.
would you say to somebody who said to you, "Oh, you shouldn't talk about that because that might stop people coming to your classes, or you might not get asked to come and do another event because you shouldn't really talk about how you're feeling. You should always be
Yeah. That
happy"? What would you?
that's happened to me so many times. I'm flipping it. Lucy, if I could show you, if we could get a database of how many times that's happened to me, it's probably daily, to be honest with you. And I'm never rude to anyone, of course I'm not. But ultimately, from an arrogant point of view, have a look at the photos of how many people come to see me every day. So um, that that fights that question for a start. But more importantly, once you do gain a following, and even if that following is three people, maybe that following is 300,000 people, you have a responsibility. So this influencing thing, to me, is a responsibility that you have been granted through the things that you have promised to be. So if you don't talk about and you're not honest, then other people aspire to be something that you're not, and it's not real, it's not true. So yes, I will always, and I mean, if there's an event that didn't want me to speak honestly, they definitely need to not book me anyway, because that's the only thing that I'm ever going to do. Particularly when it comes to periods, when it comes to women being raped, when it comes to gender equality or gender gap, there is not many people that will speak about it. And as soon as you do speak about it, I mean, I've been running a campaign through social media this week, which is called Getting People Talking. So we've talked about the weather, we've talked about And did you get bullied as a child? I mean,
Yeah.
the response on that was massive. Today's a little bit of a harder topic. So today is, have you set boundaries? And you'll notice that there will not be as much interaction on that post because a lot of people don't really understand how to reply to that or if they have set boundaries. So these are the sort of posts that a lot of people are too afraid to put on because they're thinking, oh, I don't want to have an argument in my comments, which you never have to have. Everyone's opinion is right because they are being invited to express their opinion. And a lot of people do worry about what they say online as far as, oh, well, what if everyone thinks I'm a mental case? Well, everyone's a mental case. That's what mental health is. It's a case of your mental state, and no one's is ever perfect, ever. Definitely not mine. I'm either completely excited or completely devastated.
Yeah.
Majority of the time, I'm completely excited. And even when I got married, my father-in-law gave a talk at our wedding and he said, you might have been to Disney World, but have you ever been to Dom's World? And that's where it is either pure ecstasy or pure chaos. And he knew that within a short time of knowing me, and so many other people are the same. So when we finished class last night, so actually yesterday morning, I did end up having a seizure, which was really difficult. And the last thing I wanted to do was teach a fitness class, you know. The Warriors can always tell because I just go really white. I'm very white afterwards for some reason. But I walked in, and a lot of them were like, "Oh, you don't look very well. You need to go home." And I didn't go home. I carried on with my class, which ultimately made me feel better. And I did say to the class at the end of the day, "Yeah, I've not been very well today. No, I didn't want to come. But this is what I'm talking about. This is." Fighting those thoughts that come in at 4 o'clock. I always call it cancel o'clock.
Yeah,
Um,
4
and
p.m.
I
on the dot.
4 p.m. cancel a got. And I say the instructor's feeling it too. Like a lot of the time, honestly, if we're honest, we don't want to come either. But
No,
the fact
it's
that
cold and
we'll
it's
get
raining and you're tired.
who wants to? We want to be with our kids at home or, you know, but ultimately, as soon as we go through that class, we come out feeling so much better because of the chemical exchange that's happening in our brain and the emotional exchange that's happening in our hearts. So if you are an instructor and somebody has worried you about being your authentic self online, they're going to meet you anyway. And if you have a participant that's with you for 10 years, they're going to see every part of you. So just be yourself, otherwise you're kind of setting up false relationships and it's never going to win.
I love that. So I was just going to say to you, we've got about 60 seconds left. And have you got one golden nugget of advice to give? And I think that was probably the moneymaker, that one. So
Yeah,
thank you so much, Dom. This has been
so
fantastic
welcome.
talking with you today. And there is about another 200 topics I now want to discuss with you on future podcasts. So I hope you've got some room in your ridiculously busy schedule to come on again at some point. It's been an absolute
Definitely.
pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you so much for asking me.
Thanks, Dom.
Bye.